to Effective Listening Skills, brought to you by NHS England South West. We'll be considering a range of skills for effective listening, thinking about different types of listening and learning strategies for active listening. We listen for a number of different reasons, and so we listen in different ways depending upon what we want to gain from the listening. These include focusing on the message that's being shared and gaining a full and accurate understanding of the ideas that are being shared, observing non-verbal signals and being aware of the messages that are being conveyed through those, whilst critically assessing the message, demonstrating a genuine interest in what is being said, and concentrating fully on the speaker, putting them first. And finally, arriving at a shared understanding of both sides' views. We'll be looking more closely at some of these today. When you watch a documentary, or when a friend tells you a recipe, or when you talked through a technical problem with a computer, these are some of the many other examples of informational listening. Critical listening, also called active listening, is the practice of listening to understand what someone's saying. When you practice active listening, you're exclusively focused on what the other person is saying, instead of planning what to say in response, as you would during a debate or a conversation. To confirm you understand, you then paraphrase what you heard back to the other person. Depending on the conversation, you can also ask a specific, open-ended question to dig deeper into the topic. Active listening helps you have more meaningful and engaged conversations when you're paying full attention to what the other person's saying without planning what you want to say or interrupting their conversation. You develop more effective communication skills. Ask yourself, what is the speaker trying to say? What is the main argument being presented? How does what I'm hearing differ from my beliefs, knowledge, or opinion? Empathic listening is a very important aspect of building rapport, but it can also help with improving communication, boosting collaboration, truly understanding what the other person's saying, connecting on a deeper level, demonstrating empathy, and resolving conflict. Empathy is a way of deeply connecting with another person, and a therapeutic or empathic listening can be particularly challenging. It isn't the same as sympathy, as it involves more than being compassionate or feeling sorry for somebody else. It involves a deeper connection, a realization and understanding of another person's point of view. Often, people enjoy listening for pleasure, such as to recorded books or music, for example. Building rapport involves listening actively to the expressions people use and the vocabulary they choose, paying attention to tone and pitch, and trying to utilise an understanding of these to pace and lead, and ultimately to gain trust. On the other hand, listening selectively involves only paying attention to the things the listener wants to hear and blocking out difficult messages. So what stops us from listening well? When we listen to others, sometimes our desire to help them can prevent them from sharing their message fully, as we try to give them advice when we hear something that resonates with us. We're listening in order to assist them, and this means that we need to have a sense of being in control of the situation so that we can offer the best help available at the time. Sometimes it's difficult to listen without conditional regard or conscious bias, and this means that occasionally it'll cloud our judgment about what is being said and prevent us from simply listening to the message. We have our own previous experiences of a range of issues. It's not always easy to put those to one side when we're listening and avoid jumping to conclusions about what's being said Everyone has a unique story and lived experiences. So even though we might feel that we want to share our own similar experiences and how we dealt with them, that is not always helpful to the individual sharing their story at the time. Non-verbal communication reinforces or modifies what is said in words. It conveys information about the person's emotional state and defines or reinforces the relationship between people. It also provides feedback to the other person, and very importantly, it regulates the flow of communication. Eye contact is very important in conveying transparency and in building a trusting rapport with the listener, and lack of eye contact can indicate that the listener's not paying attention. However, this could also be a sign of the listener feeling self-conscious and shy. Leaning forwards is a sign that the listener is engaging. If they are leaning back or slouched or even balancing on two legs of a chair or looking out of the window and constantly fidgeting, it can be a sign that their attention is elsewhere. Generally, being distracted is indicative that the listener's disengaged, and some common signs of this are looking at a watch or clock and yawning or fidgeting. It's usual for an engaged listener to show some non-verbal signs of encouragement, such as smiling and head nodding, to demonstrate that they're paying attention and hearing the message. So when these signs are absent, it can be a sign that the recipient of the message is not fully engaging. A sudden change of the theme of the conversation will be a sign that the listener's focused on something other than what the speaker is saying. Some non-verbal signals, particularly where the use of the eyes is concerned, such as gazing into the distance and looking out of the window at something happening outside, can demonstrate that their attention is elsewhere and that they're not participating in the conversation. Jumping in with comments about the topic early is usually a sign that the listener is keen to move on from the current topic and not fully committed to listening to the speaker first. Catherine Robertson set out a model of active listening for clinical settings. She proposes 3 types of skill, further broken down into more specific types of behaviour. Under the first heading, attentive body language, she suggests adopting a posture and utilising gestures to demonstrate involvement and engagement with appropriate body movement, facial expressions and eye contact. She also advises a non-distracting environment. Regarding following skills, she suggests using door openers that allow the speaker to tell their story in their own way and offering minimal verbal encouragement, together with infrequent but timely questions, and most importantly, the use of silence. Finally, she advocates paraphrasing, which allows you as a listener to reflect back thoughts and feelings together with a summary of the key issues. There's a wide range of techniques to develop active listening as a skill, as shown, including validating, acknowledging the worthiness of the other person's issues and feelings. For example, saying, "I appreciate your willingness to resolve the matter." Clarifying can help the speaker to see other views or perspectives by asking questions and enabling the speaker to explain further. Restating shows that you understand how the speaker feels and allows them to evaluate their own feelings, for example by saying, "You seem very upset." Take some time to look at the other examples. The acronym HURRIER is sometimes used in academic texts to summarise a model of effective listening skills. This model was developed in 1996 by Judy Brownell of Cornell University. H is for hearing, used here in a very broad sense. Not only does it refer to the physical act of hearing, but also to picking up on non-verbal and other signals, tone of voice, body language and facial expressions, for example. Understanding. Once the message has been heard, the next step is to understand. This means tying together all the elements of hearing to create a coherent understanding of what was communicated. Factors like language and accent may affect your understanding. Remembering requires focus. An effective listener needs to be able to remember the message they're receiving in its entirety. Interpreting the message builds on and enhances understanding. Interpretation means considering factors such as the context in which the message was sent. Importantly, here, the listener also needs to be aware of and avoid any preconceptions or biases that they may hold that may affect how the message is interpreted. Evaluating requires that the listener keeps an open mind on the messages they're receiving and doesn't jump to conclusions about what's being said. Evaluate all the information and only then start to formulate a response. Responding. Your response should be well measured and demonstrate that you've understood what was communicated. It might be necessary to use techniques such as clarification and reflection as part of the response. Newell and Haynes conducted a piece of research in 2003 that supported the use of music in helping with the development of effective listening skills. They said that music had unique features for making it a tool for training students in medical humanism, as it cuts across cultural boundaries and is widely accessible. They found that music helps us to listen to what's behind patients' words and put together a course on music and medicine to help further the use of music to develop effective listening skills for doctors. So, in conclusion, being an active listener involves listening without making judgments or taking a position on an issue and gaining an understanding of the situation from the other's point of view, allowing the speaker to finish thoughts without interruption, which usually includes brief periods of silence, such as a few seconds, showing that your attention is focused by making eye contact, leaning in towards the speaker when your interest peaks, and sharing any humour with a smile or other natural response. Repeating what you've heard to check for accuracy and using the speaker's exact words when in doubt that you've heard accurately. More often, it's better to paraphrase what was said. And asking questions as needed when you don't understand what the speaker's trying to communicate, particularly when you're trying to grasp the main points of their statement. And finally, by giving a short summary to indicate that you've heard and understood what was said. We've come to the end of the podcast, but if you'd like to learn more about listening skills, there are some resources on the final slide. Thank you for listening.